tell me about this podcast, Bella.
So it was my birthday last week, and I got
happy
this.
birthday, Emily.
Thank you.
I already wished you a happy birthday, but
You did.
yeah,
I
don't know if we're-
appreciated it.
Is this recording? I don't know. Whatever.
It is, yeah. So
Okay.
last week, my amazing sister-in-law got me what I am now affectionately referring to as our podcast pillow. It is a pillowcase of a cat in a Tudor gown, and it is beautiful.
Have I not seen that?
See,
that sounds like it's something I've seen.
I Snapchatted it.
See, it's not a photograph of a cat. It's like it looks
A
like an
painting.
artist painting rendition of a cat, just like head on a person's body wearing a Tudor gown.
I'm
That's
post-
cute. Did she order it or did she make
I
it? or
don't
is
know.
It like
She
a
said they've
product
had
that's
it.
just
She said they had it for 2 months before my birthday. Like, it was one of those things where they saw it and they're like, Emily needs this. So,
well, that's great.
yeah, I'm obsessed with it.
I couldn't stop laughing when I saw it.
It's so cool.
So now it rests on our couch in our house.
You talk about perfect gifts. That is a perfect gift.
It really is. It's just like, it's so thoughtful. Like, it really is. It's so thoughtful. This is also the sister-in-law that got me last year. She got me a Henry VIII mug where when you add hot water, it shows how his wives died.
I don't think I've ever seen that.
I'll Snapchat a video of it in action. It's so cool.
This is also the same sister who's dating the Brit that was on our show.
Yeah, she's basically amazing.
Yeah, we don't like talking about them. By we, I mean me.
The limey Brit. Yeah.
But
So
yeah, perfect gift.
It
The
really
only other
is.
perfect gift is selling your hair to buy your loved one a comb. No, it was a mirror.
what a reference! I approve. Way to go, Garrett.
I love throwing Gift of the Magi references out.
I am
Mostly when they
totally-
don't. Mostly when it doesn't actually work.
No, but I was just about to say I want you to start throwing it out in the most ridiculous ways.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of ridiculous, did you watch Game of Thrones this week? That was so bad.
Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of Tudor I Hardly Know Her.
Or
God,
Game of Thrones, I hardly.
That 5-minute opening of us talking about gifts.
Yeah,
from
but
Magi.
it was related to the Tudor pillow.
It was absolutely. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tudor I Hardly Know Her.
Hi, guys.
I feel like every month we're switching off on who's actually introducing the show.
I
That's
think
okay.
it's fun. I think it's fun.
So nobody gets an ego about themselves. Nobody gets a
Garrett.
big head like I'm the host of the show.
Plus, we keep our audience guessing. Maybe we can make a drinking game out of it.
Who's going to do it this week? Place your bets. Place your bets.
Next week, I want you to hold Tetra in front of the mic and make her just meow uncontrollably, and that's our intro.
I think it's going to be Poe who meows uncontrollably.
Poe makes all the
He's
weird
like
noises.
over there
Yeah, you're
making
right.
noises that sound like a drunk man asleep. So,
So Garrett on Tuesday night.
Anyway, what's that?
What?
What?
he said, so it's Garrett on a Tuesday night.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay. It's Monday. You don't need to be drunk tonight. Anyway, Game
What are we talking about this week, Emily?
of Thrones.
And the theme song to that sounds a little something like this. That's your cue, Jeff. You know, if you're not gonna have fun.
I thought I was going to edit that in. Never mind.
Oh no, I wanted you to make mouth sounds.
Oh,
He does make mouth sounds.
that's
He's
called
Anyway,
speaking.
yeah, we're talking about Game of Thrones.
Or, yes, because Game of Thrones is basically the time period of the Tudors and right before the Tudors.
Pretty much War of the Roses.
Which-
Wars of the Roses.
Yeah. And
Yeah, and we've been talking about like the similarities and things like that
Yes.
for a long
Oh yeah, it's been
Yeah,
brought up a
no,
lot.
I've
since the
had
show
this-
started, I think.
since before we started recording the first episode, I've had this episode planned. And now that season 7 just ended, I thought it would be the perfect opportunity.
And we got one last season of the whole show.
So my thinking is this is a great opportunity to discuss the similarities, but then also to guess based off of history what's going to happen.
Now, forewarning to our listeners, we are going to avoid spoilers in
For-
this as much as we can
for-
of season 7.
Yes.
So if you haven't seen season 7, we'll try to keep it safe for you.
Yeah, so you can still
but
listen to it.
anything season 6 and older, or it's time has passed.
Free game.
We're gonna
Yeah. It's
We
been
might-
a year.
we're gonna bring
Go
stuff
watch
up.
it.
Ned
Yeah.
Stark
Get with
dies.
the times, Grandma.
Yeah, so no season 7 spoilers as much as possible. If we accidentally say something, Jeff will do some editing magic to, like, I don't know, put in a warning or
So if
something.
you hear a weird like silence gap, is because we accidentally said something spoily.
Yeah, and Garrett's going to be our test to see if we spoil it because he hasn't watched season 7 yet.
Yeah, so so if we're gonna spoil something, listen for the telltale signs of me crying and screaming, saying no, 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 no.
Yeah.
I won't
that's
care
the-
that much, to be
That's the
honest.
spoiler warning. So I thought first we should talk about the history that Game of Thrones is based off of. I can't really say that because that makes it sound like it's real. And I'm sorry, guys. Dragons don't exist. Except my
That you know
bit.
of.
Oh, nobody heard that. That's going to be fun for people later. Okay, so Game of Thrones.
Da, 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 da,
Wieners, wiener, wieners, wieners, wiener, wieners.
That's pretty much the premise of the show.
Wieners, blood and wieners.
Blood and
Thanks, South Park.
So the basic action. Okay, so the Game of Thrones is like the focus is the War of the Five Kings and
Battle of the Five Armies?
what?
Sorry,
We're
that was
not
Hobbit.
talking about Tolkien.
No, except George
Not
R. R.
talking
Martin has
Tolkien.
confessed he stole some Tolkien. No, so George R. R. Martin has said pretty often that Game of Thrones, there's a lot he kind of takes from what has actually happened, which is brilliant because some of the history stuff is crazy. Like, seriously, if you tried to write a fictional story about a man who married 6 wives and killed 2 of them, and it wasn't supposed to be a murder show or a serial killer show, y'all would think he's crazy. But
I want to make a quick interjection, just a question not related to Game of Thrones, but kind of on topic. Do Tudors show up in a lot of historical fiction that isn't like historical fiction about the Tudors, but like as an influence?
You know, I would say that the characteristics of some of them are so well known that they are pulled from it. But if I had to guess which of the Tudor monarchs or Tudor people made an appearance in other fiction, it would be Henry VIII and Elizabeth I.
Elizabeth.
But I
Yeah.
can't cite any exactly besides Game of Thrones, you know?
I think there's a video game that I've played. I'm not really sure what it is that takes from the War of the Roses.
Well, now I want to know what it is. Can you research for me?
I'm pretty sure it's a Final Fantasy game.
Really?
Early Final Fantasy games are very medieval fantasy.
Ooh, I didn't know that.
They
Maybe
are-
I should start playing
There was
Final
one
Fantasy.
called. I'll look it up. But continue.
Okay. So there's the War of the Five Kings, and that's the war. Okay, so there are actually 2 wars that are important in the Game of Thrones universe. I hope if you're listening to this episode, you know this, but first there's the Robert's Rebellion, which happened before the show started, and it puts Robert Baratheon on the throne. And then there's the War of the Five Kings, and that's what happens in the show where everybody's like, no Lannisters, peace out, Cub Scout. And everybody's like, I'm the king, I'm Spartacus. So those are the 2 we're going to focus on right now. So essentially, the War of the Five Kings is the War of the Roses.
I just found out. Looks like it's just blah blah blah. There was a 50 Years War in the game.
Oh, okay.
And
Well, the War of the
the
Roses was
civil
about
war
30
between the
years,
noble
so
houses and for possession of an English crown.
that sounds right.
I don't know. Anyway,
No,
yeah,
that
there's
sounds
that in a
really-
Yu-Gi-Oh game. I know that.
It sounds really close to the Wars of the Roses. So we talked about this before, but it was so involved that I'm going to do a quick recap. The Wars of the Roses is when two basically cousins of the same royal family decided they had a better claim to the throne than each other. And for about 30 years, the cousins and the cousins' offspring fought each other off and on and off and on to claim the throne.
So I already see some similarities here.
Yeah, the cousins' houses were called York and Lancaster. So York, Stark, Lancaster, Lannister. It's not, he wasn't even
A
trying.
little on the nose there, George.
Yeah, I know. I call them Schmanister. I'm going to call this family Schmancaster. So, anyway. So the Wars of the Roses is the War of the Five Kings. And the biggest parallels are in the characters. So you have the Baratheons, and they're the ones who are the main royal family at the start of the show. So the king is Robert, and he is very much like Edward IV. He's the powerful one. He's the one who won the final battle that got him the throne. In this case, he quote unquote defeated Henry VI. And by quote unquote, I mean Henry VI was insane and then he smothered him, but he defeated him. He's Robert Baratheon. That's Edward IV. So Edward IV had two brothers that are relevant, George and Richard. George was the one who decided to get drowned, who decided that he wanted to be drowned in a barrel of wine. He was the...
AKA everyone's hero.
Yeah, he was like he was... How do I describe George? I feel like I'm quoting...
Unique.
How do I describe George? George is flawless. I heard he does car commercials in Japan. Sorry. Sorry, that was just too perfect. So George is the youngest brother. No, he's the middle of the three, and he was kind of the fuck up. Like, he kept switching sides. First he was like, I love my brother Edward. I'm glad he's king. And then he was like, but I want to be king. And he was just kind of a baby. He was not ever taken seriously as a possible king. That is Renly. So if you guys remember, Renly decides
yeah, I couldn't remember
that
his name. That's what it was. Renly.
Renly, yes. Renly is Robert's youngest brother, and after Robert dies, he decides that he has a better claim to the throne than his brother George. Well, not a better claim. He just wanted the throne, and his brother sucked. So, but like, spoiler for the season 2 or whatever, he dies. George, or I'm sorry,
He dies
real
really
life
early on, though,
Renly,
right?
George
Like, it's-
did not die from a queef monster. He just was a traitor and then was drowned in a barrel of wine. So that brings me to Richard III. Richard III was Edward's youngest brother. He was incredibly loyal to his brother until his brother died from, I think it was pneumonia or a cold. Something basic. Well, then Richard was like, I think your kids are bastards, so I'm king now. Very much like Stannis, if you all remember.
Yeah, because he was trying to expose that none of Robert's children, quotations,
Yes.
were not actually his.
Right. So Richard III.
Did he actually find that out, or
No, he just used it as a claim. His bullshit reasoning was that okay. The thing about this time period is that there are Richard III promoters and Richard III haters. I don't like Richard III. I think he was a piece of shit, and I don't think he had any legitimate claim to the throne. But there are a ton of people, including historians, who believe that he was not that bad, and that history has villainized him. I think he straight up murdered his nephews. But Richard III, his reasoning was, oh, Edward was actually betrothed to somebody before he married this commoner Elizabeth Woodville, so their marriage isn't valid, so all of their children are bastards. And so that's how he was like, oh, they're not legitimate, they can't be king. So, and then he put the 2 boys in the tower, and then they disappeared, aka he had them murdered.
Kidnapped.
They were not. Yes, they were totally kidnapped. So Richard III took the throne for 2 years, but totally Stannis right there. Stannis was like, my brother's kids are bastards. I'm the rightful king. Which, if you're following the Baratheon line,
Stannis was the rightful king, though, right?
So okay, here's the thing: you've got the Targaryens who were the rightful kings. So if we're going by rightful king, it would have been Viserys. But if you're going by right of conquest, it would have been Stannis.
It would be Stannis because none
he
of the
was
actual
the
kids
brother.
were not actual Baratheons.
Correct. They were all Lannisters. Which
Okay.
I don't fucking understand how Cersei ended up on the throne and people didn't have a bitch fit. Like, I mean the commoners. She has
For drama.
zero legitimate claim to the throne.
Besides, she's scary as fuck.
I mean, yes, but like, it just. Anyway, speaking of Cersei, I can definitely see her as Margaret of Anjou. So Margaret of Anjou was a French princess-ish, and she was married to Henry VI. Henry VI was the one who was insane, who Edward IV deposed, Edward IV deposed / murdered. Margaret of Anjou, so when her husband was crazy, she was like, I don't fucking care, and she kind of ruled the kingdom under his name. Like, she's like, look, he may be catatonic, but like,
So even on top
he's
of all
still
this,
here.
we had a mad king in history.
yes, yeah, he's like straight up the Mad King. Except, I mean, he didn't burn
No
his
dragons.
people. Yeah, he's not. There were no. Well, Ares didn't really have dragons.
Yeah,
but
that's right.
the Mad King, real King Henry VI didn't, burn people in the middle of his great hall. But Margaret of Anjou led army, not physically led armies, but she, directed armies. It's almost perfectly Cersei minus the incest. She was called a she-wolf of France because people didn't like the French. But she was extremely smart, extremely powerful, and of course a woman, so she was seen as a threat. So I actually think Margaret of Anjou is interesting. I don't dislike Cersei in Game of Thrones, but I think that her power craziness is just an amplification of Margaret of Anjou.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, let's talk about everybody's favorite asshole, Joffrey.
Oh God, there's a real life analog to Joffrey.
Yeah. So
Oh,
it is
no.
actually Margaret of Anjou and Henry VI's son, Edward. So
Of course, it would be an Edward.
yeah, I know. They didn't have many names. So Edward, the most direct parallel is that when Edward was a kid, and these wars were going on, he was freaking brutal. He is quoted as saying he wants to behead like everyone. So he was kind of,
As you do when you're a kid.
as you do, like, you're 13, you're sitting on a throne and you're like, bring me his head. He was brutal. He had a lot of people beheaded as much as he could. It was fucked up.
Okay, I thought you were saying that he was just like, man, they should behead these people. I didn't realize that he actually put them to death.
No, he actually had them. He like hollered for people to be put to death. So, okay, this one actually really pissed me off. I saw one article and I didn't even read it. It was the top suggestion, like at the top of the screen, and I got pissed and clicked off of it because it was so stupid. It compared, and this makes me think that it was written by a Richard III fan. they suggested that Ned Stark was Richard III. And like for fucking no reason. They were like, "Oh, he proved the kids of the king were bastards." And I was like, "Are you fucking kidding me?" No. I literally said I literally was like, "Oh, fuck off." And I clicked off the article. I got very upset with it. It's so stupid.
I love how enraged you get over inaccuracies and
I mean, it wasn't an inaccuracy. It's just like I don't
not inaccuracies, but like just the little things that rub you the wrong way.
I don't understand. If any of our listeners are big fans of Richard III, can you explain why? Like, and I don't mean a fan as in you're interested in his tyranny. Like, Henry VIII was not a great guy. I'm not a fan of him. I'm intrigued by him. Why? If you like Richard III, if you think he was actually not a bad guy, can you tell me why? Because he stole the throne from his nephews. You can't change that. Like, it's what happened. It's fact, you know. You can argue whether or not he did have his nephews killed. I will allow you that. But it still doesn't erase the fact that he straight up had his nephews put in a tower and then took their throne. I can't get over that, you know? So if you like Richard, tell me why. Either on Twitter or Facebook. So, okay, that's kind of it for the people of the Wars of the Roses. But there are a couple people who I think are almost directly the Tudors. So let's go back to the Targaryen family. Okay. So in case you guys need a reminder, the Targaryens are the ones who were on the throne that Robert III rebelled against and took their throne. Daenerys is a Targaryen. She's the one that's left. And then Viserys from season 1, who was given the Golden Crown, he was a Targaryen. So he was the older brother and she was the younger sister. So this is the breakdown of the Targaryens that is relevant. Aerys II was the Mad King and he was on the throne. He married his sisters, two of them, and one of them gave him a couple of children, and another of them gave him a couple of children. Those children that are relevant, there might be more, I just don't really care, are Rhaegar, Viserys, and Daenerys. So Rhaegar was the one who would have been the next king. He is very, very much like Henry VIII. And it is because of this. So part of why Robert rebelled was because Rhaegar, trying really hard not to. Okay. So
kidnapped.
Rhaegar kidnapped Lyanna Stark. The story in the show is that Rhaegar kidnapped Lyanna Stark, and Lyanna is the fiance of Robert Baratheon and sister of Ned Stark.
Ned. Okay,
yes,
I'm following.
So end of season 6. I'm just gonna straight up say this, guys. If you haven't watched the last episode of season 6, get your life together and go watch it. End of season 6, Lyanna. It's revealed that Lyanna is actually Jon Snow's mother through Rhaegar. So
wait, was that like a they weren't kidnapped, they actually loved each other thing, or
yes,
did he? Okay,
yes. So it's important to know that Rhaegar was actually married to somebody else at this time. Her name was Elia Martell. She was of she was of another powerful house, and they had 2 children together. Those children aren't really relevant, but they had them.
You said Martell?
Yes. So here is a direct comparison. Rhaegar was married to Elia Martell. When Elia Martell gave birth to her second child, she almost died and was not able to have more children. Rhaegar fell in love with Lyanna Stark, and then they had their romance. I mean, I see the direct parallel in Rhaegar being Henry VIII. He was very musical, very into being in love. He was a great warrior.
A romantic.
A romantic. Elia Martell, the wife. I see her as Catherine of Aragon.
Yes.
She was married. She was snubbed. She was married. She tried to have the children that he wanted. She ended up not being able to have any more. And then she was snubbed for Lyanna, who was the Anne Boleyn in this situation. And actually, I can see it perfectly because there was a tournament where Rhaegar won, and so at the end of a tournament, a nightly thing to do was to crown a woman the queen of blah blah blah, both in history and in the Game of Thrones. And Rhaegar fought in a tournament, and instead of crowning his wife the queen of blah blah blah, he gave it to Lyanna. So he publicly snubbed her, and Henry VIII actually carried Anne Boleyn's favor on him when he jousted, when he was wooing her. So I can totally see that almost direct parallel right there. Unless you guys think I'm stretching it. Do you guys think I'm stretching?
No, I
I'm
can
with you.
actually
I'm
see
with you
it.
there.
And actually I can kind of see with Lyanna giving birth to Jon and how Jon's become so much more involved in the show, like in season 6 when he actually starts becoming a warrior.
Yeah.
Much like you see of Anne Boleyn gave birth to Queen Elizabeth, who was.
And I'm really happy
Queen.
you said that because I do see some of Jon Snow and Queen Elizabeth I parallels. But actually Daenerys is the one where I think Daenerys is the perfect combination of Henry VII and Elizabeth I.
Yeah.
So
I mean, there's not going to be like 100% direct parallels.
No.
But we can definitely find
they're
elements
inspired
that have been
by.
cherry-picked
Absolutely.
and put into different
So
characters.
I see the Henry VII stuff in that she had a claim to the throne, but she was raised outside of her kingdom, and the only way she's able to come back into it and hopefully get the throne is through conquering. Now, if we guess what happens based on history, then if she marries somebody who's quote unquote a legitimate claimant to the throne, like Henry VII married Elizabeth of York, their line will continue as a legitimate king. So that's what I'm thinking. And I also definitely see some Elizabeth I and Daenerys because, first of all, I mean, there's that strong single ruler thing. Now, granted, she was married to Khal Drogo.
She's a strong, independent woman that don't need no
She don't need
dragons.
no man.
So wait, in order to strengthen her claim to the throne and the line, she would have to marry who?
I don't think there's a direct parallel between that yet.
Okay.
Because she has a much more direct claim to the throne through blood than anybody else in the Game of Thrones universe. Henry VII did not have that claim because he was from a bastard line. So
Okay.
he did have a claim, it just wasn't legitimate. Daenerys does have a legitimate claim. But the thing of going against Daenerys is people are like, well, you were raised outside of this kingdom. Why would we want a foreigner ruling over us? Which I get.
Yeah.
So, some of the other parallels I saw when I was researching this that actually pissed me off is somebody suggested Tyrion was Richard III. And I was like, is everybody Richard III? You're Richard III. You're Richard III. You're Richard
Everybody
III.
gets a Richard III.
I see Tyrion as more like William Cecil, who was Elizabeth I's very loyal counselor.
And he was really short too.
Very short. That's awful.
Was he?
I don't know anything about what William Cecil looked like,
Okay.
but I guarantee you he was not a little person because in those days they would have made him like a court jester. So,
So,
but William Cecil was Elizabeth's very trusted advisor, and I can totally see Tyrion being William Cecil.
so is Cromwell Baelish?
Okay, so I'm really glad you asked that, because one of the things
good
suggested
pull,
that
Jeff.
he was Oliver Cromwell. And Oliver Cromwell is actually so Oliver Cromwell was born in 1599, so Elizabeth had 4 more years of her reign left.
Mm-hmm.
But he was very powerful for a while, and I don't know where they got the Oliver Cromwell thing from. By the way, Oliver Cromwell is Thomas Cromwell's sister's great whatever.
Huh.
So, but I absolutely see Baelish as actual Thomas Cromwell, because he's
Yeah.
very conniving, very sneaky, very underhanded, very like, I'm going to twist things so they work out for me. Like, first he did it so that he could gain power with Anne Boleyn, and then he twisted things around so Anne Boleyn would fall, and then he did his whole thing through the Anne of Cleves marriage. So I definitely see Cromwell Baelish.
And you just want to smack both of them.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much. Yeah, I hate. By the way, I freaking love that my fucking Cromwell thing is now a mantra. Did I tell you guys about this? One of our listeners says she was listening to the Tudors, and you know how I hate Cromwell, and I just call him fucking Cromwell. One of our listeners said she was watching the show The Tudors, and every time Cromwell showed up, all she could think of was me saying fucking Cromwell.
Fucking Cromwell.
So I am really happy I've reached that point.
We're quotable.
I'm quotable, guys. This is such a big deal. Okay, so one of my favorite comparisons is Elena Tyrell and Eleanor of Aquitaine. Eleanor of Aquitaine was a woman who married the King of France. He divorced her because she couldn't give him children. Then she married a king of England and had lots of babies by him. But she was basically this super badass woman who, like, she was Elena Tyrell. Like, picture Elena Tyrell, and that is Eleanor of Aquitaine. It's amazing. I love it. And now let's get to a fun part. You know, the infamous Red Wedding.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. For a refresher for our listeners, the Red Wedding is the infamous scene in Game of Thrones where I think next to Ned Stark's death was the most shocking thing to happen, and that was what made people realize that nobody is safe.
Yeah.
In that, Robb Stark, who is declared King of the North, he is with
Get
his
in the north.
the
King
King of the North.
Get in the North.
He's with his mother and his wife.
Who's pregnant?
Who is pregnant at the castle of the Frey family.
Walter
now,
Frey.
Walder Frey. Now, Robb was supposed to marry one of Walder Frey's daughters, but he fell in love with his wife instead, and so he snubbed the daughter. So, to try and make it up to him, and so he didn't lose this valuable partnership, he he created a new marriage alliance with somebody in his family, and they went to the Freys for a celebratory dinner. Now, thing was, you had to, if you accepted their salt and board or something like that. Basically, if you ate at their table and slept in their home, you were a guest in their house, and it was intensely like dishonorable to the point of damnation to harm them. So they did that. They were at a family dinner, and then the Freys were like, the Lannisters send their regards, and murdered everyone, including the pregnant wife, which is heartbreaking. And Robb had his dire wolf, and in the end, they cut off the dire wolf's head and sewed it to Robb's body and kind
God,
of.
that was so fucked up.
Okay.
That and like that last scene where Catelyn
Catelyn
Yes.
she's just
Oh,
wailing, and then she just gets her throat slit.
Oh, God, yeah.
Man.
Based on a real story.
How
Two real
much?
stories.
Because I've seen a lot of horror movies that say based on a true story.
Based on a true
Inspired by
story.
true
I
events.
saw
Based
a
on a
ghost, I
true
think.
story, in that it is a perfect coupling of two things that happened.
Get the fuck out of here.
First of all, there's the Black Dinner.
Okay.
I'm not kidding. It's called the Black Dinner.
It's like
George R. R. Martin is not original.
It's like George R. R. Martin was trying to write fan fiction.
Yeah,
He's
no,
like, I gotta
you're right.
change everything around just slightly.
You're right. No, he added Edward from Twilight, and then he was like, "This is perfect." Okay, so the Black Dinner happened in 1640 in Scotland, of course, and there was essentially just mistrust and dislike between two families in Scotland, one of which was the Douglas family, and he was Oh, I'm sorry. This was in the 1400s, not 1640s. I misread myself. But William Douglas was the 6th Earl of Douglas, and he was 16 years old. And him and his 11-year-old brother were invited to dine with King James II of Scotland. Well, in the middle of eating, a black bull's head was placed in front of them, and in that time period, that was not an omen of death, a symbol of death.
It was like a black spot from
Yes.
Muppets Treasure Island taught me.
The black
Yes,
spot.
it was. So a black bull's head was placed on front of them. They were dragged outside. A mock trial was held, and they were decapitated.
Why?
Because just family enmity. And then, hold on, there's another one. Okay, the Glencoe Massacre. Ba-da-da-da-da-da-da. Sorry, I thought I wrote down about the Glencoe Massacre, but I think I got really excited about the Black Dinner, and I didn't.
Yeah, that's pretty intense.
The Glencoe Massacre was exactly what it sounds like. People were at dinner, and then there was just a massacre, like Game of Thrones massacre.
Oh, yawn. Seen it before.
I know. And I am
Such old news.
Do you have a body count for it, or like how many people?
45 or so.
Oh,
My God.
It happened over a couple of days. Yeah.
well, we
early
can't
in the
skip
morning-
dessert.
Okay.
My cream
This
puffs.
one was in 1689. Early in the morning of February 13th, 1692, a massacre took place in the Highlands of Scotland. There was just essentially chaos, and people didn't like each other, and they were supposed to be hospitable, but Colonel Hill issued orders to begin a massacre 2 weeks later. He spent the evening playing cards with his unsuspecting victims, and upon retiring, wished them good night and accepted an invitation to dine with McLean, who was the chief, the following day. McLean was killed trying to rise from bed. His sons escaped, and so did his wife. 38 men were murdered either in their homes or as they tried to flee. Gets worse. Another 40 women and children died of exposure after their homes were burned.
Huh.
Duncan Rankin was the first to die. He was shot down as he tried to escape. In addition to the soldiers who were actually in Glencoe that night, 2 other detachments of about 400 men each converged on the escape routes to kill more people.
Huh.
Yeah. So I told you, straight up combination of the Glencoe Massacre and the Black Dinner.
It just sounds like Game of Thrones.
It
Like,
really
exactly.
does, doesn't it?
You would think that like oh, they're gonna make it like crazy, and they're gonna
No.
beef up the.
He
the
toned it
death
down,
toll
if
for
anything.
TV or for the book, and no.
Yeah.
God no.
He toned it down, if anything.
Yeah, I was gonna say, holy shit.
I know. Isn't that crazy?
This is actual history. These are things that actually happened.
This is what real people did.
I know.
Yeah.
That's it. It kind of makes it more. It's like, isn't it screwed up that this terrifying story in a fictional universe is less terrifying than what actually happened?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I read about that one a long time ago, but it's still something I'm intrigued by. Okay, so I there's so many times where I'm talking to my buddy at work about Game of Thrones, and I'm like, I almost feel like I can tell what's going to happen just because of how much is pulled from real history.
Mm-hmm.
So I almost want to do that with you guys. Based on like what you've learned through the podcast, is there anything you can see happening in Game of Thrones that would be maybe not something like a twist like the Red Wedding, but maybe like how a character ends or a character story ends?
Part of me wants to say stuff, but it's also trying not to spoil season 7.
So, okay, I think one thing that we can talk about is everybody basically ships Jon and Daenerys.
Which is gross.
Okay. I'm going to be the gross
well,
person.
if there's anything, I don't think Game of Thrones was shy of incest.
So
yeah,
first
then again,
of all,
I mean,
there were rumors that Richard III was going to marry his niece. Okay.
okay.
Second of all, I think it's a little less gross because they didn't grow up together. They don't friggin' know each other. I am more disgusted by Cersei and Jaime. By the way, Margaret of Anjou did not have sex with her brother, in case anybody's trying to guess that. Although...
No, that was Anne Boleyn and her brother.
Actually...
Yeah, that's right.
I was just about to say that.
Oh, I'm so good at this show.
Yeah, you are. Go Garrett.
I'm all right. Okay.
So... everybody ships Jon and Daenerys. They think those two are going to end up together. It is gross because they're related, but at the same time, they didn't know each other. Like, I got more grossed out when people suggested Sansa and Jon are going to hook up, and I'm like, ew, because
that was a thing.
Yeah, people were suggesting it, and I'm like, that's disgusting because they did grow up with each other. Not in the cute,
Sansa
like,
fucking
oh,
hates
he's been my
Jon.
boyfriend since kindergarten. Like, that's my bro. Ew, no.
That's my older brother. Especially when
Yeah.
you're raised to believe he was your actual physical, like, biological brother.
Yeah. Yes. Like that. I just can't. I can't get over. I can deal with the Jon and Daenerys thing. Like, it's.
I mean,
don't
I
know.
can definitely see why people want that and why that's probably where the show's going.
Yeah.
Or like, I feel like that's what's been hinted at for a long time. But
Yeah, it's been a fan theory for a long time. So,
it's a
okay.
song of fire and ice. He's ice and she's
Okay, so then
fire.
on
Oh my
top of that,
God.
Daenerys doesn't think she can have children. Very reminiscent of Elizabeth I not having children. So I wonder. I don't think they're going to stick that close to the Elizabeth I parallel.
Of just, like, having no children.
of
and that's,
having
like,
no
the end
children.
of line.
Like, I think this is what I think is going to happen. This is my prediction for the show, how it's going to maybe end. I think Daenerys and Jon will hook up. And remember, the Targaryens married their siblings, so it's still less gross than the other Targaryens. I think Daenerys and Jon will hook up. Daenerys will get pregnant, and then Jon will die
Jon will
while
say, "See, I'm going back to the wall."
Yeah.
No, I think one of three things will happen. Jon will die while she is pregnant, or Daenerys will die after she has the baby, or after she has the baby, both of them will die, and Tyrion will be the regent.
Okay.
Now, I don't have a parallel in history for the White Walkers. I think zombies
It's the
have been
French.
The plague. That was good, Jeff. That was really good.
That was perfect.
Just, they're all white with all the makeup.
That was perfect. I love it. Okay.
All the mimes back in the day.
They don't talk, so makes sense.
I love it.
That dead look in their eyes, yeah.
If they get a hold of you, they turn you into one of them. It's fucked up.
Life is shit for them.
Oh my god, I love you.
So anyway, back to. So what I was always hoping, and I'm kind of formulating this as I'm talking, so bear
Go
with
ahead.
me, but I was kind of hoping that like it was just an all-out battle between Jon and Daenerys.
Ooh.
Like they're gonna go head to head. One of them's definitely gonna win. It's not gonna be like, oh, they both win in the end, or they're gonna hook up. Like, no, somebody's gonna fucking die. And all these people that we've met over the years, like they're joining either side. Like it's like your fire, your ice. Pick one now.
Yeah, I can. No, I feel like the ice has got to be the White Walkers. I mean, they're literally ice, you know.
Yeah.
The Daenerys has the fire.
And Daenerys, I mean, she's got the dragons.
John is fire and ice.
Oh.
John is fire and ice. That's true.
Yeah.
He's the one that ties them together.
Yeah. So maybe
No, they
John will
they
end up
become
on the
friends
throne.
with the White Walkers.
Aw, they just sing a rousing rendition of "Why Can't We Be
all,
Friends?"
all White Walkers want is a hug.
Wouldn't it be nice if we could grow up? Then we wouldn't have to wait. Sorry.
White Walker dead.
And now you owe Brian Wilson money.
I hope he takes an IOU. I think that's it for me. I'm out of historical parallels that I care about.
See, there's like other characters you're always kind of curious where you always want to like have an interview with him about the more where he got inspiration for different characters possibly.
Yeah.
Because there's like some major ones like
Jamie
and oh crap,
So-
Ramsey, like where he would have, or some of the other houses like where he got their inspiration, like the Greyjoys.
You know,
Did we get around to saying if there was a parallel for Wolsey?
no. No, let's see. Who would be Wolsey? Varys?
The eunuch.
Yeah. Actually, can't have sex.
Kind of, yeah.
That's a bit of a stretch though.
Okay, so it could be Varys. It could just be like any representation of council though.
And, yeah,
Could be Wolsey, because honestly,
because like I started thinking actually, honestly, my
Maybe
mind started
High
thinking of
Septon.
Stannis, not Stannis. Tywin.
maybe
he was-
a little bit. Yeah, I can see
Like I
that.
said,
'cause
anyone
he-
who was like just really
he
more of a
was in
counselor
power.
and had more of a broader spectrum of things than the king.
I definitely see a relation between the church and the High Septons, the Sparrow and all them.
Oh yeah.
just
ugh.
because of like their utter demolishment.
Do you think that there might also be a little bit of a Henry inside Joffrey as well?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
I can see it.
Yeah. Just being a tyrannical piece of shit.
Pretty much. Like maybe he's after Henry.
Mommy's little boy, and now he's all like, "I'm king
Yeah.
now."
Yeah, like he got
Yeah.
his way growing up. He was spoiled. And then when things didn't go his way, he had a fit, you know?
Yeah.
I can definitely see some Henry VIII and Joffrey. So, I think that's gotta be it, you know?
Yeah.
I really do like Game of Thrones. Like, I know there is a lot of sex and violence, but I don't think the violence is anything compared to history.
As we've already talked about
I mean-
multiple times in
Holy
this
Yeah.
show.
shit.
Yeah.
That story was.
And honestly, like, sex is human nature, and people are gonna bang. So,
That's kind of how. That's actually how a lot of things kind of were back then. Like if you hear about
pretty much.
ancient Roman stories and Greek stories, there's
Yeah. I mean,
a lot
even,
of sex and
like,
mythology.
Only the Puritans were giant prudes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they kicked him out and sent him here to the United
Yeah.
States.
So
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
I like it. I think because so after every episode this past season, I have a coworker who he and I spend about 45 minutes discussing Game of Thrones on Mondays. And every week something will happen and I'll be like, oh, that totally reminds me of like Henry VII or Elizabeth I. And he's like, I don't know history, Emily. This is a pointless conversation for me. But I see a lot of those parallels, and I think that's probably part of why I enjoy it so much.
Right.
You know? And now that the show is wrapping up, a lot of it makes sense. Like, those deaths that were seemingly pointless absolutely had a point. No death is pointless in Game of Thrones, except
Mhm.
for Hodor.
No.
That was depressing.
Hodor.
Yeah. So those are my thoughts.
All right. That was good stuff.
Yeah, I like it. I think it's cool.
It-
And If our fans have anything else to add, please add. Like, I love
Or
talking
other
about
comparison
this.
of who they think someone else could be.
Even if it's not Tudor related, like if you know that Jaime Lannister is based off of somebody, or
yeah, it doesn't have to be
like,
from English
yeah.
history. It can be any part of history. If you see some sort
Yeah.
of correlation you think George R. R. Martin could have pulled from.
yes, please, let's talk. I love talking about this stuff. It's so
Because,
much
I mean,
fun
you're
for
always
me.
kind of curious where he got inspiration for some of the Dothraki.
The Huns.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, definitely. So, let's chat, guys.
Let's do it.
Let's talk. So, I think that's it.
All right, cool.
Do you
Yeah.
guys have anything to add?
No, I feel like we kind of covered all the good stuff. You
Cool.
brought up some really good stuff, especially that I can't remember what it was called. The
The
Red Wedding
Glencoe
parallel.
Massacre.
Oh, man, one I'm
Sorry.
curious about is the Purple Wedding.
There were always suggestions of people being poisoned back then. People thought Anne Boleyn poisoned Catherine of Aragon, and that's how she died. It was usually considered a woman's method of murder. So women were usually accused, and
Or a dwarfs.
intriguingly enough, Elena was the one who did kill Joffrey. Oh, you guys, Marjorie and Anne Boleyn. Like a
Go.
million times, yes.
Well, not just because they're played by the same person.
No, because they were brilliant women who played the game and ultimately lost.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, sorry I missed that obvious one. Plus, I loved Marjorie. I miss her so much.
Yeah, she just kind of left.
I
Not
mean,
left, but you know,
Blew up.
exploded.
it seemed very, very anticlimactic. In a way.
I don't know. Maybe.
Maybe that was due to the special effects budget. Who knows?
So I think that's it for this one.
Yeah, good stuff, Em. Good stuff.
Thanks.
Bringing
Like
the,
I
bringing
said,
the Tudor heat.
what?
I said you're bringing that Tudor heat,
Yeah, I am. Ew.
whatever that means.
Is that syphilis?
Wah wah.
Poor Henry VIII. If you guys want to talk more about this, find us
Yeah,
on Facebook at
This
Tudor.
episode especially will be good for.
Yes.
Yeah.
Join me
I
in the
cannot wait to hear
conversation.
thoughts.
On Facebook at Tudor I Hardly Know Her, or on Twitter at Tudor Know Her. I'm on both of them all day long, so you guys can find me and we can chat. You can tell me how wrong I am or how right I am. I do not care. I really like talking to people about this stuff, and it makes us all feel awesome when you guys are engaged. So let's do that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's it.
All right.
So until next time.
Until next time,
Divorced, beheaded, died.
divorced,
Divorced, beheaded, survived. Goodbye.
burnt by dragons, golden crown. What else? we
Flesh
got?
wound.
Hey, wait, let's go. No. Let's go out. Let's go. Golden crown, beheaded,
Infection.
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 No. Golden crown, infection, beheaded.
Killed by White Walkers. Goodbye.
What? Bye.
Goodbye.